Hello and welcome to Big Orbit's second deck profile video. My name is James and today I have my Darkface Dark Device deck. So Megacolony is another one of those clans who another one of those groups who people don't seem to think much of because they don't tend to be meta decks. But I genuinely have a lot of fun with this deck. It's probably my second favorite deck, the first one being Brave, and I'll happily show you guys how my deck's made, so maybe you can comment on it or just tell me what you think. So right off I use 4 of Intimidating Mutant Darkface. Naturally, he's my main grade 3 I want to go to. So his GB2 ability is Soul Blast 2. When something comes onto the field on rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 2 to rest it. So this is really good for cancelling out combos, especially with Murakumo, Spike Brothers, Royal Paladin, anything that really superior calls, you can just sort of cancel out the combo a bit with this card. So you want to save that for that time, but if you're not going against that kind of clan, just sort of get rid of things that might have lots of power. And then his other ability is when you stride on him, Counterblast 1, choose 2 of your opponent's rearguards, rest them, and paralyze them. And then at the end of their turn, if they're still at rest, you get to draw a card for each one that's at rest. So not any card at rest, any of the ones chosen at rest. So he allows you to draw 2 cards as long as that all goes well. However, even if it doesn't, that's still okay. Your opponent might call over them, which would then cause them to use more cards out of their hand, making it less defensive. And so yeah, this is generally a really cool card. I really enjoy Darkface, and so I run 4 of him, and for my backup grade 3, I actually use Sky Slicing Rending General Superior Mantis. Now, a lot of people would tell you that the best thing to go for is Cyclomatooth. However, I think that having a Break Ride in this deck just makes it a bit too slow, and Superior Mantis works on the rearguard circles, so I really like just having him as a backup sort of thing. So he has Dark Device. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, you can Counterblast 1 to choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the same column and rest it. Sorry, not rest it, paralyze it. And then he has Generation Break 1, Dark Device. When he's placed on Rearguard Circle, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and that unit is then paralyzed. So he can paralyze 2 things. He can paralyze a whole column if he's put into a rearguard column, which is very, very nice. He's not the best card in the world, but I honestly don't think there's really much better than him for backup grade 3s in Dark Device. In Darkface. Like I said before, Cyclomatooth is very nice, but I don't know, he's too slow, and even if you have to ride this guy, you can just stride until you get Darkface. So yeah, I run 4 of him. I really like him. I used to use Cyclomatooth, but it was just a bit too slow. And then for my Forerunner, I use Childhood Command Rosenberg. So he has Dark Device, Generation Break 1, put him into the Soul, choose one of your opponent's rearguards until the end of your opponent's next turn. It cannot intercept, and it cannot be chosen by effects and costs of your cards. So the effects and costs cannot be chosen by does include triggers. So stand triggers won't work. Any kind of power or any kind of extra bonus they're getting from triggers just won't work at all. They cannot be chosen by like Shadow Paladin effects and Tachikaze effects to kill them and get power. They're just basically there to kind of be in the way. They become a nuisance to your opponent. And then he also has an act where you can rest him to choose one of your opponent's stood units and rest it. This it won't work for resist, but it does help nullify your opponent playing around this so much. But yeah, if you got resist, it is a bit of a pain. Generally resist is pain for Megacolony anyway. So I only run the 1 of him. And then for my grade 2s, I have Punish Stag. So he has Generation Break 1, Dark Device. When he's placed on Rearguard Circle, if I have a Darkface Vanguard, this unit gets plus 2000 power, and choose one of my opponent's rearguards and paralyze it. And then if it's still rest at the end of my opponent's turn, I get to draw 1 card. So it's like a little mini Darkface. It can only be used on call, but it does get the power, which is nice, and it doesn't cost any counterblasts, which is the main draw to him. So I run 4 of him. Then I have Charming Mutant Sweet Cocktail, who's very similar, but hers is on attack, but where on attack you have to counterblast one and choose one of your opponents, and you rest it, paralyze it. At the end of the turn, you get to draw one if it's still at rest on the end of their turn, sorry. And the other benefit to Sweet Cocktail is they cannot intercept with that card, so basically, it's a little better, but a bit more costly. I do prefer to use Punish Stag because I prefer to use my Counterblast for other cards, but Sweet Cocktail does help. Also, she has to be boosted. It is a Amber clone, but I do run 4 of her. And then finally, for my grade 2s, I have Cyclic Sickle Mutant Arist Scythe. Sorry. And then she has Dark Device on Vanguard Circle and Rearguard Circle. So when this unit attacks, if this unit gets plus 2,000 till the end of battle. So if Dark Device is effective, she's an 11k. It's not terrible because one of the main problems with Megacolony is there's not enough power going out. So having something that's 11k and doesn't need to be boosted and can actually attack the Vanguard properly is nice. So I run 3 of her because she's not overly interesting and that's kind of why. There's not really much else to go with either. And Vulcan Larfate is a great grade 1. I love this card. So he has Dark Device with Generation Break 1 on Rearguard Circle, put him into the soul. At the beginning of your main phase, you may pay the cost. If you do, countercharge 1. So that just generally helps you get your resources back, both soul and Counterblast, which are both very useful in this deck. And Continuous, if you have a Vanguard with Dark Device in its card name, this unit cannot be chosen by effects of your opponent's cards, so basically resist, and your opponent's units in the same column as this unit cannot intercept. So I really like that ability. It comes in handy a lot, and your opponent will often forget about it as well. And the first ability has come in use a lot of times. I've generally, when I thought of him originally, I thought, oh, I don't want to do that because I'm losing a Rearguard. But sometimes you just have to. Megacolony eats up the counterblasts, and you just need to refuel it sometimes. Also, the Soul Blast is very handy for Darkface's GB2 skill. So yeah, I run 4 of him naturally. He is just too good to pass up. And then I have Brilliant Blister. Now, lots of people are a bit iffy about this card. So his ability is, when this unit is placed on Guardian Circle from hand, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and that unit cannot stand during this turn. So it's used for restanding Vanguards. So it doesn't seem like, at first it seems cool, and then you think, oh, but there aren't really that many restanding Vanguards compared to non-restanding Vanguards. But if you are against those, it does come in handy, like, so much. Despite there being a lot of draw in this deck, your opponent often won't let those cards actually stay on the field. And that way you're not actually drawing any extra cards, and having a restanding Vanguard come for you is terrifying. So Brilliant Blister does come in handy a lot. I only run 2 of him, however he always manages to get into my hand. But yeah, and when I'm against my friends who know I run Brilliant Blister, they'll want to go into something that restands, but they're like, oh no, he's got Brilliant Blister in his hand, even when I don't. So it works as a deterrent as well. I just generally really love Brilliant Blister. One of my favourite artworks in the whole game as well. So, I also have New Face Mutant Little Dorcas. So this is just the stride fodder. So when he's placed on Rearguard Circle, show a grade 3 in your hand, search your deck for a Darkface card, put it into your hand, put a card from your hand into the discard pile, and then you can discard him and for the cost of stride to basically make him a grade 3. So I run 4 of him because striding is extremely important in this deck. Like if I can't stride, it's very bad for me. I rarely can do much without a stride turn. So that is where the main problem comes in this deck. And then we got Rebel Mutant Star Shield. So I still use Star Shield as the perfect guard because countercharging is very much needed. The bee lady, I can't remember her name, but there was a recent perfect guard that came out little lady with wasps or bees, and I remember not being too impressed with it, so I think Star Shield is definitely the way to go for perfect cards. Then, I'll just, yet again, move my stride a lot here. Then we're on to triggers. So I do use Makeup Widow a lot for her ability. So Dark Device, Generation Break 1, put this into the Soul. At the end of each turn you may pay the cost. If you do, countercharge 1, choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or less units, and that unit cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase. So she paralyzes a grade 1 or less. Not too amazing for that, but it is amazing for the fact that she soul charges and counter charges. Very needed. I do run 4 of her. I also run 2 of Earth Dreamer, who is Generation Break 1, put him onto the top of the deck. At the beginning of your opponent's ride phase, if the number of your opponent's rear guards at rest is 3 or more, you may pay the cost. If you do, shuffle your deck and draw 2 cards. I tend not to use this card's ability much. The reason I have him in the deck is because I feel stands are very needed in Megacolony. A lot of people might disagree, but Megacolony do lack in power, so I make up for that in possible multi-attacks. Now that's not a good way to go by it really, just like hoping you get the multi-attacks. However, it's all that I can really do at the moment. It still wins a lot of games, I find. I just think that stands are needed, especially in Dark Device. Maybe not so much in machining, but definitely Dark Device. Darkface. So then I have the crit trigger Scissor Shot Mutant Bomb Scissor, who is just goes into the soul and it's the persona crit. So when my Darkface Vanguard attacks, goes into the soul, I draw a card and my Vanguard gains plus 5,000 power. That is needed because as much power as I can get, as I've been saying before. So I run 4 of him. Then I run 2 of just Sharp Nail Scorpio, who's just a generic crit trigger. And I also have Cocoon Healer as my heal trigger. No other reason than that I just generally really like Cocoon Healer. Like the fact that her idea of healing people is to kill them and then bring them back, or make another copy of them. So that is the main deck of my Darkface deck, but I do have my G-Zone. So the G-Zone's normally when I stride, I'll go into Merciless Mutant Deity Darkface. So act once per turn, Dark Device, Counterblast 1, choose a card from my G-Zone, turn it face up. Choose any number of choose up to the same number of opponent's rear guards as the number of face-up cards named Merciless Mutant Deity Darkface in your G-Zone. Until the end of the turn, your opponent's those cards get. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, those units get. They cannot intercept and cannot be chosen by card effects or costs. So basically the same as Rosenberg's go into the soul ability. And for each rear guard chosen with this effect, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So that is very, very nice. I run 4 of him because I feel like he's one of the best cards to go into in nearly all of the time. The plus 5,000 just generally really helps. And so this cannot be chosen thing works really great if you're going against maybe Aquaforce, who would choose things to restand, or Nova Grappler in that case as well. And also Shadow Paladin, Tachikaze, things like that. Anything that is very rearguard reliant, this card will normally do well against. So I run 4, and then I have Lawless Mutant Deity Opterandus. He's Generation Break 2, act, Counterblast 2, choose a card from your hand and discard it. Your opponent cannot call to his or her units to rearguard circle until the end of your opponent's next turn. So, this basically, if you've got enough counterblasts, it can be hard to do it, but if you've got enough counterblasts, you paralyze a lot of your opponent's stuff, and then bring him out, then stun, then use his ability. So they've got paralyzed units, you draw at the end of your turn if there's still rest, and they can't call over them. So this is a very nice card. It's helped me in lots and lots of situations, especially against things like Murakumo. I do go against Murakumo quite a lot, and when I'm like, oh, he's going to bring out a Yasui Tenma turn next turn, bring this out, they can't do that anymore. Although Yasuye Tenma's not too much of a problem with Darkface because you just Soul Blast 2 to rest the cooled unit. But yeah, it is a very, very good card. I run 2 of him. He's a bit costly, but you can get the counter blasts back fairly easily. And Wildfire Mutant Deity Staggle Dipper. Act once per turn, counterblast 1, choose a face down card from your G zone and turn it face up. Choose up to 3 of your units, and until the end of turn, they get plus 1000 power for each of your opponent's units at rest. So if you're going against Legion, it can go up to 7,000 to those 3 units. It will normally go up to probably 6,000, or most likely less, depending on what clan you're going against. But it is power that is needed. People sort of brush off Staggle Dipper as not being very good. I do feel like he is, when you just need to push your opponent, he does come in handy then. So I actually run 2 Staggle Dippers, because sometimes one isn't enough. You just go into the next one and hopefully win. And then, yes, I do still use Stun Beetle. 4 Spear Mutant Deity Stun Beetle. So this is quite an infamous card for being so good that he's bad, because he'll never hit. The thing is, he's got an on-hit, which is Generation Break 2, Counterblast 2, choose a face-down mutant deity, 4 Spear Mutant Deity Stun Beetle from your G-Zone, turn it face up. When this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, all of your opponent's Vanguards cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase, and your opponent cannot normal call during your opponent's next ride phase. So, why this is important is because if you have a paralyzed Vanguard, remember that you can nearly always ride over it with another grade 3, and it will put you at stand. However, this one just denies you that. So if you try to stride over a rested Vanguard, your stride will also be rest, which is another thing to remember. So this is, like, it should be an amazing card, but it just never hits. What you want to do is try and, maybe if you're going first, you want to, as soon as your opponent strides, you want to be able to G-Guard. And then you'll be at Generation Break 2 when you bring him out. So that early in the game, your opponent tends to have not many cards in their hand, not as many as they could have, and they haven't cycled through their deck much, so there's like less likelihood to have a perfect guard. So you want to use this as early as possible, or especially if you're going against a rush deck. But yeah, the chances he's going to hit is not very high. I tend to flip him with Staggle Dippers or Merciless Mutant Deities skills, and then he just sort of becomes fodder at that point. But like with a lot of other things, with Megacolony there's not much choice you can go for, though I do run 3 of him, so I can flip one up and still use another one. And you get two chances to use his ability if you just want to go with that. Then I have Poison Spear Mutant Deity, Paraspear. So when he's on Vanguard Circle, you rest all your opponent's rear guards, or rest all your opponent's units, sorry. If the number of rest units is 3 or more, draw a card, and this unit gets plus 5,000 till the end of turn. So I will try to go into other things, but sometimes Paraspear is the best choice, just for the draw, for the power. So yeah, there's not much to talk about him. He was very handy when it first came out, but I tend not to use him as much these days. And for G-Guardians, I have 2 Mutant Deity Fortification Grisefort. So when he's placed on Guardian Circle, you can counterblast 1 and rest all your opponent's rear guards on the back row. And until and it gets plus 5,000 for each 2 of your opponent's units at rest. And this can only be used if you guard against a Vanguard. That's one of the problems with this. Because you can't, depending on how your opponent's deck works. If they attack with a Vanguard first, it works well because you've just denied them all their boosters. And if they attack with their rear guards first, it works well because that gives you more shield. I think this guy gets a bad name because Defeat Flare Dragon came before him, so people just think of him as a bad Defeat Flare Dragon. However, having your opponent's rear guards on the field does actually help Megacolony, and unlike Defeat Flare Dragon, this gains extra shield, which is very, very nice. So I run 2 of him. I do really enjoy using him actually. Lots of people will say he's bad, but I just think that's simply not true. And then lastly, I have Dream Mutant Deity Scarabgus. When you place on Guardian Circle, if the number of my opponent's units at rest is 2 or more, this unit gets plus 5,000 shield until the end of turn, becoming a 20k shield. And that is my whole Darkface Dark Device deck. I really love this deck. It's a lot of fun to play. It's if you're ever thinking about getting into Megacolony, I definitely give it a go. I used to have machining. But I did start to feel with the machining stride, machining got kind of boring. The problem was you'd always go into the same stride, Machining Destroyer, which is an extremely powerful stride. However, it just, I don't know, there's a lot more challenge with this deck, a lot more to think about, a lot more for your opponent to work around as well. So it's fun to see how your opponent works with it. And honestly, this could be better in some cases, because Machining Destroyer paralyzes the Vanguard and one of your opponent's rear guards. But if your opponent has grade 3s in hand, that hardly phases them. This thing will do lots of things to your opponent's rear guards, which I find more fun because they can do less about that, because they start to not being able to choose things for effects. And I personally think Darkface is the most fun out of the Megacolony decks. So if you're looking to Megacolony decks, definitely recommend this. If you just want something to beat people with, I guess Machining Destroyer might be better, but it always depends on the deck. Because I went against Victor once with Machining Destroyer and just got destroyed by it. So yeah. I hope you've enjoyed looking at through this deck now, and I hope it's enlightened you to what this deck can do. So be sure to leave a comment on what you feel, or if you want me to go through another deck. I know that in the previous video for the Brave deck, if you haven't checked that out, you might want to have a look now. But in that video, nobody really requested Megacolony. However, I just have the Megacolony deck, and I just wanted to go through it. So I'm sorry that I didn't go through any requested decks quite yet. This is only the second video, but I do hope to go through them soon. So yeah, I will be doing some more deck profile videos, so I hope that you check them out, and I hope that you check out the Outmile Brave deck if you're interested in that as well. I find that deck a lot of fun, one of my favourite Royal Paladin decks in general, so be sure to check that out, and well, I hope to see you next time. Bye!